Welcome back to live coverage here on Yahoo Finance. I'm Zach Guzman, and very happy to be joined now by the host of Shark Tank, our favorite host and friend of the show, Barbara Corcoran, joins us now. Barbara, always good to see you. First off, I want to just get your take right now, as we've been highlighting pretty worrying case counts rising right now on the coronavirus front in Texas, Arizona, and Florida. I know you've been pretty adamant about supporting businesses, including your Shark Tank investments here through the Paycheck Protection Program. But as we see a potential here for a second spike, curious to get your take on how those businesses are doing and whether or not more stimulus will be needed here for businesses across the country.
Well, with the second insurgence, which I'm not sure all of us expected, it isn't the news we were hoping for. And people, I guess, went to the party too early. But it's causing a great concern among the businesses I've invested in because they were, like all of us, wishing and hoping and praying that everything was behind them. And many of them are located in the states that opened early. Those, I guess it's now a count of 9 states that have a spike in cases. But, you know, it's a tough call. Who decides when it reopens? What's going to happen to these businesses if we do have a second spike? And I can tell you with the majority of my businesses, they're not going to survive. I mean, they came through this one with a lot of wit, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of creativity, and go and put in their pedal to the metal. And I'm not sure they have the gumption to do a second run if we should go down into lockdown all over again.
I mean, gumption's one thing, but also funding here too. I mean, you talked about how many of your businesses were in precarious positions here without paycheck protection funding. It took them a while to get that money, but now even getting it, beyond that, still a lot of issues just as we're thinking about potential lockdowns again. Of course, the Trump administration has said that those are not on the table, so maybe not actually going to be happening here. But beyond that, I mean, we talked about waves of stimulus checks right now, Republicans, Democrats still going back and forth. What's your take on what else might be needed on the stimulus front here as, again, we're continuing to monitor case counts going in the wrong direction?
Well, let's be positive just for a moment. If they don't go in the wrong direction, I must say that I think the PPP loans was the major savior in the game here in terms of how effective they were, how they played out against my businesses, or for my businesses, I should say. They're enormously effective in giving people the breath to come through the hardship or over the bridge. In terms of execution, I would have to give it an F because the way it was rolled out was complicated. Even the forgiveness on the forms, which are now changing again, hopefully making them more simplified, it was just terribly done. Okay. But you can't argue with the fact that these PPP loans were essential to keep these businesses afloat. And so if there's nothing on the table right now saying that that might be promised in the future, I don't think you could take that seriously. We don't have the future in front of us right now. I'm sure something will happen. Everybody wants to get favor with small business consumers, and there'll be some other incentive somewhere along the way. So I'm going to keep the faith on that. But it's amazing to me. The good news about this whole thing is it's amazing to me how many of my really smart businesses pulled ahead and are doing so much better than before the virus even hit. I have a little company named Comfy that was doing $43 million in retail sales, and it went to zero within 2 weeks. And they totally converted it to online sales of $67 million. How they pull that out, I'm still scratching my head and wondering. And then, you know, you have a crazy food truck business I'm involved in, Cousins Maine Lobster. Who wants to be in a long line waiting for a lobster roll when you're going to get the virus from the next guy? Well, they just rolled out a contactless delivery system in the parking lots of major big box stores that were closed, and people drove up and picked up their lobster tail. And then you got Daisy Cakes making birthday cakes, the best delicious birthday cakes in the world, selling like hotcakes. So it's amazing how people will turn things around. And that has really been the very positive up feeling about this whole thing that I keep looking at. I'm looking at the good news. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, that is good. And we have seen a lot of businesses, you know, navigating this and using funds to weather the storm. But now it seems like the question has become getting people back to work. And we did see out of the last jobs report, promising developments on that front, maybe not as much as people hoped. But when we look at, what could happen moving forward right now, it seems like Republicans might be pushing for a return to work bonus as we see that extra $600 at the federal level on unemployment insurance roll off at the end of July. And I had heard some, anecdotes here from friends even saying that they might not go back to work because their unemployment is actually better than what they could get. So as we're seeing that kind of approach here at the end of July, what's your thinking about whether or not that bonus should stay in? Should it go away? Should you have a return to work bonus? What's your thinking? And have you seen any of that in your own businesses and maybe struggling to get people to come back in?
Very much. That is a major concern right now. First, it was keeping people on payroll, and now it's having them come back. Especially in food services area, especially with lower priced workers, they don't want to come back to work. And I know I had a lot of conversations with my businesses beginning of last week who really were struggling with the issue of trying to talk their employees into coming back and looking for sale pitches to give them to convince them to come back. And so I gave them some little tough talk about, okay, here's what you do, give them a deadline. And guess what? A miracle really happened. A lot of their workers came back. The great majority of the workers who wouldn't come back the week before are now sitting and working for those businesses. But you have to appreciate the workers' not only concern about the health of coming back, but you have to appreciate, why would you come back if you could make more money with your freedom at home? And so I am not in the camp of extending that $600. I might eat my words and feel very differently a couple of months from now, depending upon what goes on with COVID. But right now, I think it's more of a disincentive to get businesses up and running than it is helping it. I think there's a time to chop it, and it's happening in the upcoming month, and I think that's a good thing. I hope I don't sound too tough, but I really believe it's getting in the way right now.
No, I mean, I think it's a tricky thing, especially if you're trying to incentivize a return to business. No doubt why the president is in an election year. But of course, it's one of those things where everything's moving so quickly. We have case counts rising. You don't really know how serious those health concerns will be. And we'll see what happens as we get closer to the end of that. But as you've noted, I mean, you've invested in a lot of business in Shark Tank, including some unprofitable ones. And one new company out there has been getting a lot of attention right now in the electric vehicle space. Nikola, play on Tesla here, similar to Tesla. You got the owner, I guess, similar to Elon Musk, trying to change the way that they're rolling out electric vehicles. But you've talked about Tesla and Elon Musk and how investors who believe in Tesla's mission are really essentially betting on Elon Musk. But I'd be curious to get your take, because Nikola's come under a lot of pressure, and that stock's doubled since it began publicly trading here. Its market cap was almost as big as Ford's. It was bigger than Ford's at one point, despite not delivering any vehicles. So, I mean, you're a good judge of character here. You've said that you can invest in companies that aren't making money if they got a good leader and are about a good thing. What's your take on what Nikola is trying to do and whether or not you are a believer?
I love Tesla, and I'm a believer in that company wholeheartedly. I don't feel the same way about Trevor Milton, not to take from him. Here's what I give him. I give him great grades for being a phenomenal salesperson. I mean, when I listen to him talk about the size of his new car, how you can use it on job sites, how all the doors open for the family, how you can put your baby seats in, and you could put a four-wheeler in the back just as well. I mean, this guy's an amazing salesman, but he lacks a little credibility. He lacks credibility because he's not giving any clarity on when it's going to be delivered, and yet declaring war on the most successful truck in the industry, which is the Ford. Am I calling it right? The Ford F-150, right? It's called. Yeah. The wonderful pickup truck. He's being vague on even deposits to order, somewhere between, we know, $250,000 to $5,000. He's vague on the cost of the new vehicle, somewhere we think between $60,000 and $90,000. And by the way, Tesla, who I'm sweet on, is only $39,000. Their little truck. So how do you compete with that? So I think the stocks and how they've gone up and down, and now they're somewhere in the middle, as I recall, reflect his ability to sell on any given day. And he's erratic. I don't know. I wouldn't put my money there. Not that you're asking me. I'm not trading my Tesla. I'm just not doing it. No, thank you.
No, I mean, we know that's basically it, though, because we've seen, the following around Tesla is really people, obviously, as we've discussed on this show, you came after, you complimented Elon Musk, and, there's a lot of applause around that, and he's got a very intense camp. Maybe starting to see that with Nikola, but we'll see what happens as that company goes on. But
let me just say one more thing, because it bugs me. When I overheard him say, this is again Trevor saying that investors care more about the environmental impact than they care about revenue. I'm like, no, Nope, that's going too far. I don't believe it. That's when I clicked off right there.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of issues in the electric space. Plus, not to say that a lot of these other traditional automakers aren't also pursuing a lot of this as well. A very intense competition ramping up in that space as well. But I want to shift over to housing as well, because you called that one pretty much last time we had you on the show. You're saying that there was a lot of reasons to be optimistic on the housing front. And just this week, we got some incredible headlines when you think about home buyer mortgage demand spiking to an 11-year high. You got home builder sentiment, as we highlighted on the show earlier this week, showing its best monthly surge ever. So what's your take on housing now as we get those data point developments here, and how that could set up for a very strong back end here in 2020?
You're going to have a phenomenal housing year. Prices are going to continue to go up. When the buyers in many of the states that are restricted are allowed to come out and actually look at houses, they're going to make a lot of purchases very quickly. So even in states where you have excess inventory, it's going to be gobbled up because people have a tremendous appetite right now for the word and the concept and the love that they call home, HOME. They're in love with their home, or they're critical. And I don't think I have a single friend who isn't thinking about moving for this reason or that reason, because they've had too much time to think about it. Everybody's been at home looking at their house. Is it a good schoolroom? Is it a good office? Is it a good safe backyard? Are my neighbors far away? Everybody's reassessed the concept of home. And what that creates is a desire for change. And when you have change, you have a rising housing market. Couple that with giveaway prices in the mortgage market, where money is so cheap, it's almost like you're embarrassed to say you don't have a mortgage anymore. There's so much incentive there that you're going to be surprised. Well, maybe you won't be surprised, but I think a lot of people are going to be surprised what's going to happen with the housing market. Even in New York, which is my hometown, that everybody's writing off and saying everyone's moving to the suburbs. Of course they are moving to the suburbs, but I've been there before. The great majority of those people move back, and with prices coming down in rentals and in lower price sale numbers, which is going to definitely happen in the large cities, more people are going to move in, and it takes care of itself. I'm just not worried about the housing market. The commercial market is where my eye is. And fortunately, I don't invest in commercial buildings. But if I was investing in commercial buildings, I'd be worried if I'm the bank supporting the mortgages there. I'd be worried on the commercial end if I'm a landlord, because I would say 1 in 4 people who have a commercial lease this month call their landlord, when the landlord, it should have been every landlord calling the tenant and saying, what could I do for you lately? I'm really worried about the value of commercial properties in every city and every town. I don't think people are going to return to the larger floor plates, with the exception of the offices that will always need a fancy A suite with the conference room, But other than that, people are working from home. There's great software to support it. And I do believe that we're going to really have a big shakeout in the commercial market.
At least, I mean, there is optimism there as malls start to reopen in some states here, and New Jersey malls even going to be opening up June 29th. We got that update. Simon Property maybe catching a little boost on that. But when we talk about the housing, as you mentioned there, it's interesting because the 30-year fixed rate mortgage falling to a record low when we look at that, dating all the way back to 1971, now at 3.13%, down from 3.21. And you raise a really interesting point that I don't think we've talked about so much in demand and supply. Of course, that's always the market, right? When we talk about anything, it's where demand meets supply. But you raise the point of people thinking about moving now and how that could come from all of this stay-at-home situation. Supply was already constrained when you talk to a lot of people in housing. So how might an increase in demand actually fluctuate through the market here and impact housing even more so than what people may have been bracing for?
I think you're going to see an explosion in prices, really. You had so many strong markets before COVID hit. Most markets in the United States were going up in price. I think the average across the U.S. in the last 12-month period was roughly 7 to 8%, as I recall. That was already happening. So you already had a great foundation going. All we had a pause in our clock. Okay, everybody wait, hold it. You can't see houses right now. But people adjusted, appraisers adjusted. They started appraising by drive-bys. Attorneys met in parking lots and exchanged contracts. People even adjusted despite all of those obstacles in the way. And so now picture that as a clear road where people could actually come out and see 4 houses in a row. Oh yes, you're going to have overbidding. You already have overbidding in many communities across the United States. The only little fly, if you want one little negative news, because I sound like a Pollyanna here.
Sure.
Is that I do sound like a Pollyanna, but I really believe it. But I have to say that the banks have twisted down a little bit on their requirements. They just don't want to, banks are, nervous Nellies. That's their job, to be nervous all the time. Okay. So in the nervousness, they make the qualifying a little bit more tough for people. So a few people will be knocked out of the market that heretofore could have gotten into the market. And that will seem like an unfair play. But that's the only negative. That's the only cloud I see on the horizon. I really am looking hard for something because I don't like to lose my credibility sounding too positive.
Hey, you always got to hedge. You always got to hedge every time you're on here,
Yeah, what's the political thing? I've been learning.
Yeah, so far you've called it. So, I mean, there's not much to hedge here, but Barbara Corcoran, always appreciate chatting with you. Thanks again for taking the time. The host of Shark Tank on ABC, Barbara Corcoran. Thanks again.
My pleasure. Nice being with you. Bye.